Welcome back to We Know Scripted TV, where today we know Dune Prophecy, Episode 1, The Hidden Hand. My name is Grace, but of course, I'm not alone. First, joining me is the one and only Taran Armstrong. Taran, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Grace?
This is a great visual gag for those watching us on YouTube.
I think great is not the best way to describe that visual gag, but I'm doing well. Happy to be here. Happy to be talking about some Dune.
Dune, HBO's new hit Sunday night show. But Taran, we needed a third, and it comes in the form of father. It's Josh Wigler. Josh, how you doing?
How you doing?
Another great visual
Such
gag.
a father joke.
How you doing?
It's the Raised by Wolves crew back together. Watching
Yes.
Travis Fimmel on TV.
If Travis Fimmel is going to be on a show that it was at least originally meant for Max, and it's a science fiction series with some like vaguely desert planet type notions, like he should be podcasted about by the three of us. That's just a rule that's etched somewhere in one of these crazy biological indexes that the sisters have crafted.
I think one of my favorite comments that I read about this episode of television was that Travis Fimmel's character, Desmond Hart, they're pretty sure that he's just the guy he played from Raised by Wolves, who has like found his way to Dune World.
Totally.
Which I think is completely fair.
I'm not going to be mad at lensing Dune Prophecy as a secret Raised by Wolves sequel, but I think probably like the real Dune heads aren't going to love that.
Raised by Wolves also has big circular tunnels that creatures come in and out of.
There's a lot going on between these two shows. If you watch Dune Prophecy and you enjoyed it, like you have to figure out a way to track down Raised by Wolves, because I don't think it's on Max anymore. Yeah, but you should check it out. You'll be very happy that you did.
And when you watch House of the Dragon, after you've watched Raised by Wolves, you'll get to see that both mother and father are in House of the Dragon. So there we go. Yeah. But we're chatting about Dune Prophecy, The Hidden Hand, this new HBO show. We're going to be recapping this weekly, so you should make sure you are subscribed to the We Know Scripted TV feed. You can do that by searching for We Know Scripted TV, maybe RHAP We Know Scripted TV in your podcaster app of choice, or you can go to WeKnowScriptedTV.com. We're also on YouTube at We Know Scripted TV. If you want some special edition coverage, this podcast will also be dropping in what was previously, as we mentioned, the Raised by Wolves podcast feed, which is now the Dune podcast feed, RHAP Dune. You can search for that. And we'll also be, at least for the first episode, in the aforementioned House of the Dragon podcast feed. Yeah.
I think I think that we need to ping the House of the Dragon people. So we're putting the podcast in the House of the Dragon feed because I'd like to knock on the door of the House of the Dragon people and just be like, just checking. There was reports of a robbery in this neighborhood. We've had some witnesses saying that some folks broke in and ran away with the entire plot of your show. Have you heard anything about this? And so just like we're canvassing the House of the Dragon faithful in case you haven't checked out Dune Prophecy yet, which has been accused, Grace, of in all of these reviews you see. How many people are talking about Dune Prophecy without mentioning Game of Thrones? Guilty as charged. I wrote an article for The Hollywood Reporter this week saying, is Dune Prophecy really just House of the Dragon in space? That's how I meant to say it when I wrote the headline.
I mean, it does have houses.
Yep.
Each house has its own symbol, animal kind of thing. Politics.
Yep.
Lots of characters.
Ambitions for thrones.
Definitely ambitions for thrones. Large creatures.
Yeah, but this is so fitting that Dune Prophecy would come out, and like there are literally many articles that in the title, as you said, Josh, reference either House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones. And what is hilarious is that Frank Herbert wrote Dune, and then nobody was willing to adapt it. And then George Lucas saw it, was like, I think I'm just going to take a bunch of those ideas and put them in my Star Wars thing. And then Star Wars became the most popular thing ever. And so I think it's just has to be like tradition that like Dune Prophecy comes out and everyone's like, yeah, but this is actually really the other show over there, actually, right? So it's very Dune, I think.
I think a regular RHAP, We Know Scripted TV listener and sometimes commenter David Lynch is thrilled to hear you just totally forget that Dune ever happened. That never happened. He never made that.
I almost joked that actually it's actually the fault of David Lynch who made a Dune movie. So interesting that they were
I'm
like,
a huge so I think before we like dig into plot really quickly around the horn, should we just give like general Dune takes? I think is probably like, let's just like temperature check where we are with Dune. I've read the first book. I read about half of the second and enjoyed it and just got distracted by life and did other things, so I'd like to go back to it. Loved the 2 movies that Denis Villeneuve produced over the last few years, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I love David Lynch's Dune, warts and all. But I would not go as far as to say I am a Dune head. I'm going to get pronunciations wildly wrong. I will forget details. My heart is in the right place when it comes to the Dune franchise. Taran, what are your Dune credentials?
My Dune credentials are purely the Denis Villeneuve films. I watched both of them. I have not read the books. I intentionally did not read the books when I heard the films are coming out. I felt like I would enjoy the films more than the books.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but that is my knowledge base.
I fell in love with Dune when the first new movie came out, not the David Lynch one, when I watched the Denis Villeneuve movie. And then I had since read 3 Dune books. And I've watched the second movie. I was tempted to read Sisterhood of Dune, which this show is based on the book, loosely based on the book, which tells me don't read the book and be like, this is going to be everything that happens in the show.
Yeah.
Like, they made a lot of changes. That one is written by his son, I believe, not Frank, written by Brian with a co-writer. So, but I fell in love with it. I was saying this on the Tastemakers that like Game of Thrones for me was like the thing that was like, I'm going to be so in love with this thing. I love it so much. And then the ending of the show happened. And then kind of like then Dune happened. I was like, oh, I'll just actually be in love with Dune over here. So that's my Dune credentials. But yeah,
okay.
We've all watched a fair amount of Dune.
So we've all watched a fair amount of Dune. We come in from different angles. Then that's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that the son's contributions to the series are slightly contentious with the Dune fan base. That there are some who debate his level of canon with his additions to the series, and that don't enjoy his contributions as much. This is based on those contributions, loosely based on those contributions. So that is going to be, I think, a pain point for the Dune heads that do exist out there.
Yeah, there's a Reddit article from 3 years ago that says, are any of the Brian Herbert Dune novels worth reading? And the first response is, I say this every time, they're not Dune. It's the most upvoted comment on the thing. So yeah, pretty contentious.
I mean,
but
like right away, we begin this episode with some lore drops that includes a war against the thinking machines. That I believe is an invention of the son, not a part of the original books. So like already it's like, oh boy, we're getting into all kinds of stuff. But
are you telling me Brian built Skynet? Brian, you're not supposed to build Skynet, Brian.
So
right.
True.
Wow.
All right. Well, Dune Prophecy premiered this past Sunday. Dune Prophecy, starring Emily Watson, Olivia Williams, Travis Fimmel, as we've mentioned.
It's only a matter of time before your high-profile science fiction / fantasy franchise adds Mark Strong to the roster. So Dune has finally done that. Congratulations, Mark.
Strong move.
Congratulations, Dune.
Yeah. And this is going to be the story of the Bene Gesserit, basically like very early on, 10,000 years before the movies that we chatted about, the Denis Villeneuve movies. I do feel like I like the episode a lot, but I do feel like the waters are a little tepid out on the streets. I feel like I do feel like there has been a little bit of like narratively wonky. Has been some, a little. It's exposition heavy. There's a lot going on. This is the general feeling that I'm seeing from the Dune streets. Taran, we talked it a little bit about on the Tastemakers, but it feels like you're not. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth because I feel like there's this thing that happens these days where it's like people will be like, "I think it was good. I had these problems with it," and all people think that people are hearing is like, that person thought it was bad. It's like, no, I said at the beginning it was actually good. So I want to put words in your mouth, but I feel like you are closer maybe to what people are saying out on the streets than what I'm feeling like is I was actually like very, very excited by this premiere.
Maybe a good way to like quantify it is that I went in expecting and hoping for this to be like a 9 out of 10, maybe even a 10 out of 10. And I came away feeling like, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Like
7's good. That's a good grade.
Exactly. Now I was thinking about 6, but I went with 7 because I didn't want my disappointment to push me too much further down. But like that is where I'm coming at this episode from. 7 out of 10. It was good. I enjoyed it. I was hoping for more. I was expecting more. And I do have some problems with it, which are part of the reasons why it was a little bit lower than I was hoping.
Josh Wigler, I've not yet heard your take on whether you liked it or didn't like it or liked some of it and didn't like some of it. Where you stand one episode into Dune Prophecy.
I think I'd probably also go a 7 out of 10, and that's fine by me. I think like I'm good with a 7 out of 10 right now. A 10 out of 10 Dune show would have been amazing. But I think that the Dune adaptations largely have like a little bit of there's a little bit of like edge to all of them. Like it's all of them are a little bit rough around the edges except for these 2 recent movies. But I think that like that sort of like sort of obscures the fact that like the David Lynch Dune was really poorly received, and it's still controversial to say you like it. There were a couple of miniseries that were all right, that were fine. But if this show is just like sort of like in that mold, it's going to be more like, past was prologue, and that the movies are a little bit of an exception to the rule. But I think that that's probably also unfair to like, I don't know, the level of scope and scale you do get in this first episode to me was pretty impressive. Some of that budget certainly could have gone over to our fallen beloved Raised by Wolves season 2. And they could have really done some wonders with that budget. It's familiar, the storyline between Dune Prophecy and the first 5 episodes of House of the Dragon, I would say, are fairly in lockstep. Like, there is a potential sort of power grab for the throne. There is an older ruler who's maybe like a little more gentle-mannered and isn't ready for these times. There is like a wild-eyed, crazy soldier who is getting closer to the throne, who's on his way back from war. So like, Damon fits in very neatly into the Desmond Hart spot. Viserys fits very neatly into Mark Strong's Emperor. Like, I think you can even see that, like, the princess here in Dune Prophecy is going to be sleeping with her sworn protector. For her, it's actually at the nightclub. For Rhaenyra with Kristen, it was on the immediate other side of the Westerosi nightclub. The 2 shows, the very first episode of House of the Dragon has a prologue scene that doesn't last very long, but immediately tells you that this takes place X amount of years before Daenerys Targaryen. This one has a sprawling prologue that ends with a title card that tells you it's X amount of years before Paul Atreides. Like, there's commonalities for sure. And I think because House of the Dragon is as big and as identified with HBO as it is, you cannot help but make an internal shot. Like, you cannot help but make that comparison. And that's not going to be favorable to Dune Prophecy unless Dune Prophecy does some really unique standout stuff. And there's absolutely time for that. And I think visually there was a lot of stuff in here that I loved, world building stuff that I loved, the early Bene Gesserit stuff, and the sisters still doing sort of like the sign language communication. Stuff like that is still just so cool. Give me a Chris knife fight with like the force field stuff any day of the week, and I'm really happy about that. But did it like do a lot that distinguished itself from types of shows like this we've seen? I don't know. Maybe not this first episode for me. I think that there's room. I do think there are definitely people out here who are liking it, but I think that you're right that it's sort of split. Grace, I've been doing some Dune scrolling lately.
Mm-hmm. I was doing that like all November. Like there was a couple weeks, like there was like the first week of November. I was doing so much Dune.
No, Dune, not
Oh,
Doom, not
oh,
Doom. No,
oh, got
no,
it. Now
no.
I'm
The
on Blue
Dune,
Sky and it's great. I don't
yeah,
Doom scroll.
blue scrolling.
Yeah,
I've been doing some Dune scrolling, Grace and
yeah,
Taran,
yeah.
to see what the people out here on the Blue Sky streets certainly think. Grumpy Dad, this is Grumpy Dad's review. You ready? Quite enjoyed Dune Prophecy, sci-fi Game of Thrones. So for Grumpy Dad, the comparisons are positive. He
I didn't know
doesn't
my dad
seem
watched Game of
mind.
Thrones. He told me he wasn't watching.
Yeah, maybe he just watched an episode or heard about it. I think is
Mhm,
possible.
mhm.
This one's from Cam, who says, "I really enjoyed episode 1. Lots of fascinating themes, intrigue, mystery, and characters. Plus, it looks great. Great ending to the episode that will definitely make you want to keep watching. Much broader story arc than I expected." A few of these kinds of like positive reviews, and then you get stuff like, "So Dune Prophecy seems a bit Bene Gesserit's at Hogwarts." That doesn't sound like that was a complimentary review to me. So I think it's a bit more split, certainly, than the powers that be that moved this show from streaming on Max to being part of the Sunday night marquee HBO lineup. They don't like it when their shows land with this being like the initial impression. And I think the initial impression is like there are definitely people who really liked it. There are some people who were sleepy by it, and probably somewhere in between and even further on those polls. It's not like a unilateral, this is a hit, we're feeling good about Dune.
The one thing I will say is they did something similar where, if I'm not mistaken, Josh, The Penguin was initially a Max show
Yes,
and then
correct.
became an HBO show. And
The
I
Green
feel like
Lantern show that they're working on right now, Lanterns, was originally designed to be on Max, but now it's moving to HBO
yeah,
proper. So,
they did this with
we're
a bunch.
crossing the
Welcome
streams.
to Derry, I believe,
Yes.
also moved. So I do feel like they were kind of looking at what they had coming, and they have this like a Max seems like there was a play of like it's IP stuff, and they decided for whatever reason, like, why don't we just put those on HBO Sunday night? Like, we don't have to sort of like, I think that they were struggling to see where their Succession or their like, this like not quite what we're getting over the next 6 months is. I think also probably buoyed by The Last of Us, that I think does fit into more of what I think like these shows are versus what a sort of classic HBO Sunday night show was, but was immensely well received and very popular. And so I think maybe opened the door for them to make this switch. The reason I bring up The Penguin specifically, because I think that The Penguin started off pretty slow. I don't think it had the most successful premiere that I've had. There is a point, I think for me, it's about episode 4, where Mike and I were a little high on the episode. We're like, that was pretty good. And then people were like, that was amazing. Like, that's the best thing I've seen all year. Like, there was like this thing. And so for me, I honestly do think, I think I'm the most biased. I think I have the most, like, I don't own any actual Dune stock, but if I could, I probably would.
Yeah.
Actually, I probably wouldn't buy Warner Brothers stock right now, but that's another story.
Probably a
That's
good
another,
idea. Yeah.
I'm not gonna buy, actually. So, but I think that for me, what worked the most was this thing that I really loved about Dune that felt like, and what I really loved about Game of Thrones, and I felt like these people who had created this world had put so much time and effort into being like, if you want to go, deep dive on this thing, and you have to be careful in Dune because you might meet a sandworm, but you really can just like go all in on this thing. And so for me, like, I'm a history major. So when the show opens up with like 10 minutes of exposition, I'm sitting there being like, well, I think I like this a lot. And then the thing for me that I thought worked the best is there's a couple of scenes this episode that do revolve around Travis Fimmel and what he's doing that I think plays really interestingly into what this show, from so far, what I think it will be, which
Okay.
is, this is actually a story that I thought The Acolyte was going to do. And I thought actually it was the thing I was most excited about, which is The Acolyte goes to this planet where there is like the Force, but these people are not Jedi, and they don't even know really about Jedi. They don't care about Jedi, and they use the Force in their own particular way. And I was like, how fun to think about. Of course, like we often in a story we are narrowed in, and by the time we can go dive deeper, like you can do in a television show, we can really expand the scope. I thought The Acolyte failed miserably in its execution of how to do that, but I got very excited by this idea that Travis Fimmel shows up as Desmond Hart, and that this is what I presume to be the story about the first real threat the Bene Gesserit faces in terms of people who can do things that are as similar to them. That by the time we get to Dune, I mean, it's a little bit of a spoiler for what I think happens in the show. I don't think it's going to turn out very well for Desmond Hart, because by the time we get to the show, the Bene Gesserit are who the Bene Gesserit are. But this is, I thought the show would be sort of like the creation of the Bene Gesserit. I don't think that's really what it's going to be. I think it's about the first time that they are faced with something that they need to extinguish. And it's whatever Desmond Hart can do. And I think the two scenes here are he gets eaten by a sandworm and he makes a kid's skin bubble up and die.
Taran,
Pretty cool, I think, Taran.
Didn't they eat him? Is that how he got from Raised by Wolves over to Dune World? Is because like he got like transdimensionally eaten? But didn't we? I think we just watched that guy get eaten. How is he here? What's happening?
I honestly don't remember what happened to him.
He
might have become a tree. I'm not sure.
Maybe I'm Raised by Wolves. Yeah, that sounds right. But here he's being eaten by worms and he's fine.
He's being eaten by worms. I mean, he mentioned something about that. I mean, I'm honestly very confused by him. Who is he? What is he doing? I have no idea. But
not my Desmond, this guy. Not mine.
What if he goes in a hatch?
I think what we appear to know is that he is anti Bene Gesserit. And how did he get that way? I don't know. I don't know enough yet.
He really hates machines.
Does he though? I don't know.
Or maybe he likes them secretly. Yeah. The machine stuff threw me off for sure. I was really upset on behalf of the little boy king when his little transformer got stabbed. I was more distraught about that than the fact that he seems like he just internally combusted based on Desmond Hart's ability to make you have fires inside your body. What did he do?
Taran, I feel like you're like, I don't know. To me, that is the most interesting thing that comes out of this episode. And what I presume is, this is how they end their first episode. And to me, this is like, I think some of the best shows that we've got the chance to talk about. Josh, you recently launched back into a Severance rewatch podcast.
Yeah.
That is a show filled with mystery, and it's so fun to talk about. And for me, this is what like this episode finishes, and I'm like, I also don't know what's going on, but I get to think about all week what might be going on. To me, I think that like this is what I imagine is that it is some form of whatever the Bene Gesserit ended up being able to do. That this is a threat to the Bene Gesserit. That again, the problem with some prequel shows is that it feels like we pretty much know what the outcome is, but maybe not. And I am interested to see who he's connected to, who's involved, how does he get these powers? Did he get eaten by a worm? Like, it seems like he definitely did. So that to me was, and so I guess what I'm saying is that I think I really liked the episode, but I think it's totally fair for people to not be as excited about the promise of the show as I am after one episode, because you don't have to be as bought in on this thing as I am. And if I wasn't, I might be closer to your sevens than I am. Probably been not that much higher. Like I think I'm only at like an 8.5.
I love a 7. I love a 7 out of 10. I think a 7 out of 10 has like a totally specific vibe that works well with me when I really need that. When like what I really want is just like, oh, here's like a loud show with some like cool character beats here and there, but like I'm also exhausted right now and I don't want to have to think that hard. That's like a 7 out of 10 for me. That's kind of how I'm approaching Dune Prophecy. I guess an issue there is going to be like all of the intricate family trees and all of that, and tracking all of the characters, which shall become difficult with my approach.
That was my thing. I got pizza. I sat down.
Kind?
I turned off all other screens and lights, and I watched this whole episode. And like 30 minutes in, I regretted it. I was like, I wish I was doing something else right now. It's not capturing my attention quite enough to hold me. And that's what I want from a Sunday night HBO show. I just want it to fully capture my attention, because I feel like, especially when they're just like out on the club, I don't need to be paying full attention. You know what I mean? Like, like I get it. I get the vibe. We can, let's go to the next info dumping scene. Like, I'll pay attention then.
I like Dune Club, Grace. Would you go to Dune Club?
I would go to the Dune. I go because of the Dune, not because of the club. It's like I'm not. If they can make my eyes turn blue, I'll go. There's spice there. But I'm not a club person, but I would go because it's Dune themed. Josh, are you going to the Dune Club?
I would go to the Dune Club. I really want to go to a haunted house, though. Personally, that's where I'd rather go.
Yeah,
I don't think it ends up good for you. Yeah, sorry, Taran.
Should we do some recapping? Should we run through some of the events?
Yes.
Of the episode?
Should we go chronologically? This is probably the.
I think we could just take we could take it by storyline.
Okay, where do you want to start?
Why don't we start with? Should we start with the characters of the hour, the sisterhood?
Yeah, the Bennies.
Bene Gesserit.
Wow, I haven't heard. That's actually very good. Yeah. It does seem.
Voice.
We do open up with this is why I was going to start chronologically, because we do start with basically a voiceover from Valya Harkonnen, who is played by Emily Watson, who will eventually become Mother Superior of the sisterhood. We see the origins of the Bene Gesserit sort of explained. Raquella founding the order. Raquella dies and on her deathbed has this vision of destruction, of the holy judgment, and she chooses Valya, but Valya has a little bit of a conflict with somebody else who might want to be in charge, and she very quickly snuffs that out by using the voice and making her kill herself. This is Dorothy, who is no longer with us. Dorothea, sorry. Dorito. Dorothea. Yeah.
Yeah, she was just like, oh yeah, sorry, just using the voice, just this thing I've been working on. Sorry,
I was
going to
show it to you. It was going to be so cool. Could she have maybe said, instead of like, then take that knife and stab your throat, could she have instead said, tell everyone how cool I am and how they should back me as the new leader, and that you actually never really wanted it at all, but you just felt obligated because of family stuff.
They did record that scene, and then they were like, actually, the one where she stabs herself is much cooler visually. We need some action.
Did you have to do that?
She's also totally lying, right? Like, she's doing the thing where she's like, oh, I was gonna tell you about this. I was gonna share it with you. It was gonna be so cool, but you had to go and ruin it. It's all your fault. I was gonna do that. I was gonna share this power with the person that I knew was threatening to me, but no, you had to go and do a thing that you were gonna do. No, that's not what's happening.
But establishes her as a Harkonnen immediately, right? So that's like, if you're tracking families, at least as per the Dune films, Atreides good, Harkonnen bad.
Yeah,
for 10,000 years, apparently.
Yeah.
It is a thing that I will say that I'm like, oh, we did 10,000 years, because it was my thing about the Acolyte, which I know I just talked about it, like, but when I was excited about that, I was like, ooh, we're like so much in the past that we could, like, what's different? Basically nothing.
Nothing.
like nothing. So, like, I was even
like the tech. Yeah. They destroyed the thinking machines. Technology is stagnant. Whatever, right? I get that's part of the universe, but
pretty sweet in the world of Dune prophecy. By the way, 100 years after they defeated technology,
you could have told me this was 50 years before Dune, the movies. And I would have believed you, because they're talking about the things that they're trying to, like, their position is the same as it was, but it's all just the same.
Yeah, and I do feel like if you were going to go that far back into the past, you then do have some leeway. Like, I don't know whether I should say this is a spoiler or not, but like, Mark Strong plays Emperor Carino That's the same last name as Christopher Walken's character in the. So we don't like. There is seemingly no power shift, which again, if I was like then thinking about like, okay, why are they doing this show and what can they do in this show? It's where I have to like kind of hone in on Travis Fimmel, because it's like, okay, that is going to be something different, I think. But in terms of Harkonnens and Atreides and Carrinos, they're all going to stick around. So I don't know, what mystery we're going to get. And we're not going to get much mystery. I mean, they're going to hang around for 10,000 more years. So,
it's a lot of years.
It is a lot of years. It is. I mean, is that one of the, this is like House of the Dragon, I think, suffers from this, and I feel like has surpassed it though in terms. And then the Penguin. I just talked about the Penguin. This is the show that just finished airing before this show, which is we basically know where we're going to end up by the end of the season, because we know we haven't seen the thing. Like, it's not a prequel, but we know that there is a movie.
He's got to be the Penguin.
Right? He's got to be the Penguin, and he's probably going to be in the movie, and Batman's not going to be in the TV show. So we only have so many places we can go. But this seems to, like, Josh, tell me, like, I guess, like, hypothesize with me. Why are these networks so, like, what is the appeal of a prequel series that lets them say this is the name of the character that's the same name of the character that's there, but that sort of like robs some of the surprise element that you could have in the show? Like, why are they they keep greenlighting them?
Certainly do. I don't think that it necessarily has to be some sort of narrative albatross if it's done well. I think that there have been a lot of moments where House of the Dragon has done it well, and now also a good amount of examples where it hasn't. I personally feel like Lord of the Rings does this rather well. The TV show Rings of Power, I think, does it rather well. Obviously, looking away from fantasy, but still on prequels, like the one that did it the best is Better Call Saul, and did it extraordinarily well. So it can be done. I think that we probably tend to like focus more on these things in the past, because like you can't do anything that's going to like either like maybe you literally cannot, but for rights reasons, go past the point of the original IP. Maybe for reasons of decorum and ethics, you don't want to go past the point of the original ending of the IP, like something that's going to jeopardize sort of like the integrity of the thing. For instance, I would have thought that the Jon Snow show that they were talking about making would be the like the most slam dunk out there, like the most obvious
the ending
to green light. But that's like sort of like then what you just said sort of ends up becoming like the narrative around it of like, oh, here they come to fix the ending, as opposed to like, oh, here they come to tell a good story. There's that stigma that comes around it. But I also think that there's some degree of like, George R. R. Martin has things set a certain way, and we shouldn't fuck with that, And I think a lot of these stories end up going to the past, because what is there really to screw up? George Lucas, whether or not he found out or not, certainly a lot of people found out what happens when you F around with the past. You get midichlorians and stuff. So what kind of midichlorians are we going to be getting?
But to be fair, when they went into the future, it was worse.
Yeah.
That's true. That's very true.
So I don't know. I mean, my biggest take is obviously like not going to happen, which is I would love to like more original stuff is where I would vote. Like, does Dune need a TV show? I don't know that any of these things need a TV show, but if you're going to make them, then for me, it's a lot less about like, I guess for me, it ends up being a lot less about like the landing point of Dune prophecy, and it's going to be a much more about the experience of Dune prophecy. And so knowing that certain people will retain the throne, or Desmond Hart doesn't have like the Vegas odds are not great, like I think that that's fine, as long as like is the dialogue mostly really good? Is the narrative simple enough to follow with great acting, decent dialogue, great effects, good choreography on the fight stuff? Then I'll be very happy to watch it without expecting too much more beyond that. But I
just wanted to tell a good story.
Yeah, I think that's it. But for me, that comes in a few different forms. Like, it doesn't have to be like the plot does not have to be immaculate, and it doesn't have to be like particularly surprising either. I think like it just has to be done well.
Yeah, and that's what I was hoping for with this show, was just like, give me more time in the Dune universe done well, and I'm happy.
Universe.
I think that, like, you know, to maybe get back to the recap portion of this, like, I just felt like there was just so much going on that like it was hard to find myself invested in any one mystery or character or storyline, because you have the Bennies, you know, doing their Benny stuff. And, you know, you talked about like the criticism of like, oh, it's the Bene Gesserits at Hogwarts. I'm like, I would have liked that show, but I feel like I got maybe 5 minutes of that show. I don't know.
I wouldn't have liked that one. The Bene Gesserit would all be transphobic.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. But then I also got 5 minutes of like princesses marrying little kid show, and then I also while sleeping with her fighting instructor at clubs show, and then I got 5 minutes of Emperor is listening to advisor over wife show, and then I got 5 minutes of stranger walks into the palace and has his own mysterious motivations show. It's just like this is so many things and people and characters and plot lines and lore that they're trying to shove and cram into one episode that I couldn't get invested in any of it, because it was just so overwhelming in terms of how much they were trying to accomplish.
It was definitely tense.
And I don't know that it was accomplished super well. I thought it was a little clunky here and there. That said, those are the criticisms, but like, I do think that there are a lot of strengths here. There were some performances that I thought were very fun. The world is just a cool place to exist in. And I like the concepts so much. The Bene Gesserits, these lie detectors who are able to influence power by providing their services. I will tell you whether or not somebody's telling the truth to you. And via that, they're able to control the lines of communication and power throughout the entire galaxy, universe. I don't know what the Dune verse is.
Everything.
But they're like apparently hungry for more power, this one particular character, and so she's trying to go deeper. And so I like that. I think that's a fun plot line. And I would love to, like, I'm excited to see more of it, and I'm excited to continue to watch the show and just like vibe out in the world. But yeah, it just felt like there was, for me, just so much that it was trying to accomplish in such a short period of time. And I know that there's only 6 episodes in the season. So they probably have to go fast. But like, quite frankly, I don't need the big info dump at the start. I don't know what it's done for me. Like, if they had just shown the thinking machine scene without telling me that there was a big war, that would have been really, I would have been like, ooh, so something happened with the machines. That's interesting. And, you know, like, just, I don't know, give me more of a more naturally told story that is a little slower and a little more character focused, and I'm in. That's what I want. But, you know, not everyone's me.
Well, it's interesting, though, because I think the thing I was saying that I really loved about the movies, which is how immersive they were. And I keep saying this thing that I feel like when I saw people be like, I didn't like the Dune movie. And I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, well, I came out of it and I felt really dumb because I didn't know all the stuff. Like, they would just use words that I didn't know. And I'm like, for me, that was so fun. That was fun for me to like I want to know more. But other people were like, no. And I do think that it's kind of a commitment to go watch the movie in a way that I think they might have just thought they couldn't necessarily do that in a television show. And they were required to have something up front, and there is this notion that like you have to hook people. Like, I do think, and unfortunately, Taran, I think it like had the opposite effect for you, where the worst thing that HBO could probably hear is that like halfway through the episode you wanted to turn it off. It's literally only because you're sitting with us that you
I didn't want to turn it off. I just wanted to wanted to be on my computer or my phone while I was watching it.
Yep.
Putting words in your mouth. But yes.
That's the thing that like HBO, especially Sunday night shows, do for me, is that when we talked about House of the Dragon, even at its slow points, even at its disappointing points, it was always a show that I just watch all the way through, that I'm gripped in the whole time, because it captivates you. And that's what I was hoping for with this, and it wasn't quite there. But I do think there are some fun things we could like dig into here and there about the show and the episode.
Totally.
So
yeah. So going off where we left off, which is that Valya is the Mother Superior, is that they are preparing for Princess Inez to join the ranks. And there's this scene where they come in, her half brother Constantine, and is like, we need special treatment, and they're gonna say no. And it turns out like that's actually what they wanted. The whole like, okay, good, like you're not gonna treat her any differently. But that Inez specifically is like set up to be potentially somebody super important. And I think some of the main conflict here is in this episode between Valya and then eventually Kasha being one who thinks that this might be not great. There are like signs that Inez might have like a troubled, there's something bad about this, and ultimately she's the one. She also burns up via the burning skin condition.
Just a coincidence, though, probably.
Just probably by accident. Just who knew?
Is he burning her from all the way across the universe?
So my guess would be no. My assumption would be that there is somebody else who is able to do this. If you had to put somebody on the board from this, look back, probably have to rewatch it to be like, that's a candidate, that's a candidate, that's a candidate. But who's aligned with Desmond Hart would be my one of the questions I would ask and be thinking about this week, and will be asking this week, Josh.
I have a thought.
Who is it?
I don't trust Olivia Williams.
Yeah.
So Olivia Williams, who plays Sister Tula, who is Mother Superior Valya's sister. So Emily Watson and Olivia Williams playing sisters, who just seem to get along a little too well. I think that they get along just a little too well. And if the Harkonnens, if Harkonnen passed his prologue, these people are shady MFers. So does Tula have some sort of secret thing going on with Desmond? Is there some way she is able to obscure her true thoughts from her sister, maybe?
There has to be some reason that we got so much time in the beginning of this episode dedicated to this like split in the organization, because like otherwise what was it for? Like there has to be some kind of civil strife, right? Yep. Between within the Bene Gesserits. Otherwise they don't set that up. So yeah, I think whether it's the sister or something else, but I would imagine it has to be these two sisters disagreeing and coming to a head at some point.
I mean, it fits very nicely, Josh. You said, like, from what we know about the movie, Harkonnen bad, Atreides good. Yeah. We do have these two Harkonnens, and one of them is the narrator of the show. And so, like, certainly it could turn out that, like, she's just fully evil. Like, it could be that. But
which could be cool, which could be very cool if she's, like, Team Desmond Hart and she has, like, some sort of, like, this like long-term like breeding index plan that involves like just like nuking out the normal world order. Let's not forget, like, she's the one who's so committed to the idea that one of us needs to be on the throne.
Yeah.
She also definitely lied about what she saw when she was like, "Oh, go and check, please. Just go and check."
Yeah.
And then she comes out and she's like, "Yeah, turns out it's exactly what I was saying. Oops. Oh well."
Yep.
Yeah. So the last piece of sort of the story here is like this marriage that's going to be between this young boy Pruitt and Inez, although she is romantically interested in Kieran Atreides, obviously sword master. Desmond arrives, he is very handsome, talking about this Arrakis attack, and then ultimately by the end of the episode, the marriage that was going to happen is obviously not able to happen because Pruitt is dead. He's just dead. He's dead. That boy has been in a lot of things I've seen recently, and so I was like, oh, I cast this guy, this little kid. He was in the Matilda movies, been in a bunch of other stuff. He's not gonna be in the show anymore.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think he's done. And then obviously Kasha dies as well. So yeah, actually, I think to like critique the show, even though I said it was good, I actually don't think there's like that. It's actually not that much going on, and it's not that I don't think that like if you didn't follow, like I needed to like write my notes out and then like read them to figure out what's going on. I think it's like a big discredit to the show that actually wasn't that much going on, but the fact that it felt this dense and this hard to track and follow is, I think, a notch in the like it wasn't super strong in terms of an individual episode. But I do see where they pulled out all of this thing that for me, like these are where the seeds of the story were and what they were excited about doing this story and where we're going. I do think to the point about like the Civil War, the other piece in my head, I kept thinking like, oh, Desmond, like how does he get his powers? Is there, if he goes into a sandworm, if you watch the second Dune movie, like this is where the spice comes from.
In part of my Dune scrolling on Blue Sky, I found this Dune skeet as skeeted by Stephen Fishback, who said, for season 2 of Dune Prophecy, there should be a bottle episode from the sandworm's point of view.
That's good.
I think that's a good idea.
I do like that.
Yeah, I think that I think you're right. I think it's not that there was actually a ton going on, and I think that's part of what the issue was it was that like it's a fairly straightforward-ish, so we have the pieces. It's just that like it was told from so many different, like they're trying to do so much in that they're trying to tell it from all of these different perspectives, and I feel like you don't need that many perspectives at like right now. Like let's be focused and tell this story. Like there were so many scenes that I just didn't find necessary at this time that could have been told in a more interesting way that would have like eased us in, I think, is the main thing that I'm looking for here. Because like like when we narrow it down, not that much, but what they're telling is like, oh, look at all this stuff.
Yeah. So, and then the thing I think that I would like, as we like sort of like potentially wrap up our recap of this episode, is like, okay, what is in here? And I do feel like there is this trend to just go back to the IP thing, which is that like, Josh, I agree. In the perfect world, all of the networks are just like, we just got to, green light original stories. But the thing that I keep hearing from creators of shows, it's not how it's going to go. And what actually happens is that a lot of folks, so there was a story on a podcast I was listening recently where he was talking with someone and someone was like, that's such a good idea for a story. And he's like, I know, but it won't be that. It will probably be like the superhero version of that. And I've heard this being called like Trojan horse stories, where it's like, if you have this idea, for example, of like a really good, well, let's use this one, for example, of like two sisters who seem to get along, but actually they don't get along. Is this being like snuck into, is this the broccoli in or whatever they sneak broccoli into, I don't have children, into a Dune show? So like when we look at, this is Allison Schaper and Diane Ademu-John, like what story were they brought in specifically when they're told like, you can do anything with Dune? And I think you're totally right, Josh, that like, I do think from a network perspective of like Warner Brothers being like, yeah, you can take Dune Prophecy because you actually, yeah, you're right. You can't screw up the future of Dune by the show 10,000 years before, but you could tell a really compelling story within that. Again, whether or not it's been compelling so far is another story, but like, I think if we're looking to answer some of the mysteries so far that have been set out and try to theorize, I think we should also be thinking about, okay, then what were these two women brought on, or what did they pitch to HBO to say, this is the really interesting and compelling story we're going to tell you, wrapped up in Dune wrapping paper.
Yeah, I'm curious to know. It's only 6 episodes this first season, so it's going to be like a pretty brisk ride. I'm here for it. It looked great. I really do think the world building of Dune is just the way that it's been recently envisioned, I think is just some of the most creative eye candy in this space currently available. So like, I don't want to be too like old man yelling at cloud, because like I think that stuff is real purdy, and I'm looking forward to seeing if it can then be as gripping narratively, and I think that there's definitely still space for it. Some of the people involved in the show are incredibly talented. Old friend of post-show recaps in the Mr. Robot podcast, the great Core Adana is a writer on Dune Prophecy. So a great pedigree from him. Like there's really
that sounds like a name from Dune, though. That's why
I know.
He got the job.
That's more like a name from Dune than Desmond Hart. Desmond Hart and Duncan, Idaho both sound like they're from totally different shows.
Well, Frank Herbert, I feel like he had two bad. It was like he put like normal name or weird name, and so it's like everyone you're like Paul Atreides. It's like normal name, not normal name. You know? I feel like that's kind of the Dune way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then he just threw like Idaho in as a wild card.
I don't know.
If you pull the Idaho card, all bets are off.
Yeah, I am excited. The other thing too, I was just gonna build off your point there is like Taran, you and I talked about the Rings of Power, and one of the things I think that we struggled with not struggled, but it's like a challenge that is hard to overcome on a podcast, which is sometimes when the show is visually incredible, that's great. It's not super fun to just like belabor and talk on about. So like we'll spend like 30 seconds being like, wow, that scene where that thing happened looked amazing. And that's kind of all you can say about it, but it adds a lot. So I do agree with you, Josh. Like I think the show visually looked pretty incredible, but there's only so much I can say of like when Mark Strong was walking down the stairs, I really love when the doors open and the art behind him looked really cool. Like that's about all I can say about it. You know?
But that's a great observation.
Thanks.
I think I am interested in sort of like the art design within the world of Dune and like what are their concepts of art even like? Because the various like things among the Atreides look very different from the Harkonnens in the films, and all across the way. So I don't know. There's lots of elements of like the world building that I think are fascinating and worth calling out as we get there. We're getting our bearings here, right? We're just like sort of getting acquainted with the show. We're going to be back for episode 2 certainly, and maybe we'll trend higher on it. Across the board. I'm like modestly satisfied. Taran, you're not satisfied at all, and Grace, I think you're enjoying it. So I think between
you guys both gave it a 7.
Well, listen, I will approach episode 2 expecting a 7, and I will probably enjoy it a lot more with those expectations.
So our like assessments will be reestablished and all that good stuff.
Okay, well, I'm very excited about Dune, even if I think everyone's excited for Dune. I think we all want is a really good show. So, that's a high bar. And we've had some good TV recently. So, and the movies were good. So, make sure you subscribe to the We Know Scripted TV feed, WeKnowScriptedTV.com. You can search RHAP, We Know Scripted TV. We're also RHAP Dune you can search for to be specifically subscribed to these episodes. And if you're joining us from the House of the Dragon feed, make sure to subscribe to one of those other 2 feeds to make sure you don't miss our episodes. And we're also on YouTube. Josh, I mentioned before, you're doing a Severance rewatch.
Severance rewatch is happening right now. We're gearing up. The Road to Lumen, January 17th. At long last, Severance returns. So the crew is back together. We're currently recapping those original episodes. They are not filled with spoilers, but they are, we call them, it's informative guidance. We've seen the show. We're guiding you through it. It's a good idea to pay attention to that. Wasn't that thing interesting? We're pointing at all of the different signs on the map that you should be paying attention to as we get back for season 2, which I am beyond hyped about. Very excited.
Are you going to help me not have to rewatch season 1 before season 2 because I barely remember what happened on season 1?
I'll do my best. I think that the podcasts are designed to help that for sure. But also rewatch Severance, you heathen. What are you doing?
Josh, when do I have time for that?
Double speed,
all
baby.
Of the other new shows.
That'll work for you.
Yeah. I need
to is kind of like being in the Big Brother house.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
being a severed person is sort of like being a Big Brother contestant. I think
that's pretty true. You just have to do it for like 100 days straight.
Yeah.
I keep telling people, I'm like, people be like, oh, what should I watch? Like, if you watch Severance, and like, no, and I could be like, what are you doing? You need to go watch it literally right now. So my biggest advice to people is listen to the Severance Rewatch podcast, but also go ask a friend if they've watched Severance, and if they've said no, say you should watch it. If they say yes, you like keep going. You find another friend until you found.
If they say no, you say, "I'm gonna sever you."
Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
And then
that's right.
Our friendship
jail?
severed.
We're also recapping Silo here. Taran and I are talking to the Tastemakers, so lots going on. And We Know Scripted TV. Is that all? Have we duned enough for this week?
I think we're duned out.
All right, we'll see you next week for another episode of Dune. Until then, bye bye.
We hope you're doing well.
Good.
That's the sign off.